Stand for Children Illinois put out a position piece earlier this spring that said it is not a guarantee lose for every school district in the state if Speaker Madigan, if the Democrats at the General Assembly decides to move to a cost shift. Explain that a little bit more further.
Yeah, actually, I would say it's a lose if we don't reinvest in schools. But if we're looking at this from the standpoint of what's an equitable way for us to distribute state money to local school districts, the state picking up the tab for all teacher pension costs outside of Chicago is a really inequitable way for us to be funding schools. And the rationale for this is simple. If teachers have higher salaries and higher pension costs, that's going to be in wealthier areas generally. Those are the areas that are getting the biggest piece of that state subsidy.
This is not just simply let's shift the cost to school districts and walk away. The General Assembly that has to take the money that would have gone to teacher pensions and put that back into the classroom.
Exactly.
Which districts in general, I know there's a map and I'll try and edit that into the video, but in general, which are the districts that will make out better? I assume there are some districts, if you've got a lot of property value and you're paying big, that sounds to me like DuPage County where I went to school.
Right. So the map very generally, we've looked at who does better. If education cuts have to happen, which districts do better if they come through a cost shift, and which districts do better if they come through general state aid. And it's exactly what you said. The districts with high property wealth and low poverty counts are the ones that would prefer to have money come through the TRS pickup. Districts that have high poverty counts and low levels of poverty wealth are going to do better if the state puts that money into general state aid.
I was surprised when I looked downstate. There's a huge swath of far southern Illinois that is green on the map, which means it does not lose. But some of the more populated central Illinois cities, Springfield, Lincoln, where I live, Bloomington, Normal, the Quad Cities, those I expected suburban districts. I did not expect the mid-sized cities in central Illinois.
Yeah, and not all mid-sized cities fit that category. That was interesting as well when we ran the numbers. Peoria, Rockford, East St. Louis, some of these areas would do far better keeping the money in general state aid. Springfield and Lincoln, like you said, were ones that would probably rather have their money continue going through the TRS cost shift. But I'll be clear that everybody will do better. If the options are a cost shift is going to happen, everybody does better if we say those are education dollars. Those dollars need to return to the education budget. We need to distribute them more equitably, but if we take that money and put it toward unpaid bills or put it toward additional pension costs, we're in essence cutting education twice. The General Assembly has, over the last few years, gone through this much more transparent budget process where they set a revenue estimate and then they kick it to the different appropriation committees and say, elementary and secondary education, this is your total dollar amount. Higher education, this is yours. General services, this is yours. And so these committees have their finite number that they're working within to allocate the budget. Well, our standpoint is if you do that process and then you do a cost shift on top of it, isn't education bearing the largest amount of that cut, a disproportionate amount of that cut, for something that is, I would say, the most important priority for our state?
So if I'm a superintendent, if I'm a school group, as opposed to fighting what looks to be inevitable, generally when the speaker lines up behind something, it is inevitable. As opposed to trying to fight the cost shift, the battle should be to get that money reinvested. And we're talking millions of dollars. I saw a $440 million figure. But don't fight the cost shift. fight to get that money put back into education as opposed to going towards old bills or social services or another area of the state budget.
Exactly. And, if the General Assembly makes the decision that we need to put more into unpaid bills, that's their prerogative, and that's fine. But the cost shift shouldn't be the place that it comes from. It shouldn't come exclusively from education funds.
Jessica, anything else I should be asking? Anything else you want to throw in?
Let's talk a little bit about the huge disparities in education funding that exist anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Our country in general has a regressive education funding system. Illinois is the second most regressive funding system of any state in the country. We've heard it year after year. Center for American Progress report came out last September that again reaffirms we have incredible disparities within our school system. And general state aid is the one funding mechanism that's fighting that. It is the one progressive funding mechanism we have. And all of these studies that are looking at how we fund our schools and educational funding equity, none of them are considering the pension costs as a piece of the puzzle. So we are even more inequitable than the research that shows we are the second most inequitable state. And, our standpoint is we understand reality. We understand there's not a ton of new money to come into schools this year. We're realists. The General Assembly is talking about cutting. They are not talking about flooding the education system with a wealth of new dollars. But we want people to understand that even within the current state funding stream, there is room for more progressivity. And this is one of the key ways that we can work when we're in a fiscal crunch to make sure that we're protecting our most at-risk kids, our most vulnerable populations, the ones who cannot raise that money locally, but who have just as much of a right as every child to a high-quality public education.